Fearscape Media Network, exploring the unknown, one podcast at a time.
Hi, friends. This is Kelly with Wishful Drinking and Binge Thinking, the podcast where I get just absolutely hammered and I dole out psychological advice. That's right, I am going to be more drunk than that girl you met in the bar bathroom after your karaoke set who said, "You have such good stage presence. Oh my god." That's right, zero preparation, multiple drinks, countless profound gems. Tune in the last Monday of every month on Fearscape Media Network.
Ghosts in the Attics, Bodies in the Basements may contain graphic, violent, vulgar, or explicit content not suitable for all listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Ghosts in the Attics, Bodies in the Basement. I'm your host, Anna.
And I'm Lindsay. Let's come inside.
Okay, lady. So this last weekend was Father's Day. Did you guys do anything super fun?
Nothing special. It's the same like with Mother's Day. We kind of always just want a chill day. We cooked out a brisket, we smoked it.
Ooh,
and
yum.
then for the most part, it was just house projects that my husband wanted to do. That's how he wanted to spend Father's Day, is all the house projects he doesn't get to do while he's at work.
I mean, it's his day. If he chooses to do manual labor, then good for him.
Yeah. So we like cleaned our garage and stuff. It was tons of fun.
Saturday, my husband and my father-in-law moved a shed that our neighbor gave us from like literally right next door into our yard, and that took them about 12 hours.
Oh my gosh.
Because you're moving a shed with a tractor. Welcome to country life, people.
Hey, better than just like pulling with a rope or something.
Yeah, it was a lot of like, I don't even know how they did it, to be perfectly honest. I tried watching for a while and offered to help. Not that I can really, but
yeah, especially with your back.
I'll get into that in a minute. But
okay.
I got water and I went and bought snow cones. And then for Father's Day, since he did so much stuff on Saturday, he was like, "I just want to be left alone. Can we just not?" And I was like, "Yeah, we can do nothing." And I went to the local art gallery that I'm a part of, and they had a 1-year anniversary celebration for being open. So we had a little potluck, and that was fun. Really cool. Yeah, I got the itch to buy more art. You know how that goes.
Yeah.
And so I didn't, though. I was really proud of myself. I didn't spend more money because I don't know where I'm going to put things. So I can't buy something unless I know where I'm going to put it. That's the new rule.
The pot office will just be completely covered, like no paint visible.
No paint visible, just a small gallery in my house.
I mean, it's not the worst idea.
No, I think it would be pretty cool. But we did that, and then our friends came over and just hung out for a little bit, and that was Father's Day. It was really, really, really like blah, 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 blah. Can't talk today. So it was pretty relaxed and just a really chill day. Kind of a busy weekend if you really like sit down and think about it. And then yesterday I went to my spinal appointment.
How'd that go?
And it went. I got a nerve block, and see, they told me I'd be under sedation.
Oh yeah.
So I had to have a driver. The IV like left the nastiest bruise I've had in a long time.
Did they blow out a vein?
I think she might have, and I could feel everything they were doing to me to the point that I was like sobbing. And I don't think the IV like was in a vein. I think it was in my skin. So I don't think I got any of the medicine that they were trying to give me to
no.
sedate me.
What a nightmare.
It really, and I have bruises all over my back now. I mean, obviously they injected me.
Well, yeah,
So
but
I
still.
just look like a giant pin cushion. It's fantastic.
You see, my husband used to get nerve blocks years ago, and I only have vague memory of it because it was probably like a decade ago. But I don't think he felt it because I always had to drive him.
I had something similar done when we lived in Colorado. I don't remember anything. And the lady was the nurse that was talking to me yesterday because I was telling her that I could feel all of it and like maybe next time can I not?
Yeah.
And she was like, "Oh, well, I mean, you're not supposed to be high." Oh,
Well, that's not what you were asking.
I wasn't trying to be high. I was trying to not
Be
cry,
butchered.
right? Like you're sticking several needles in my spine. Like it's not pleasant. And I almost donkey kicked the doctor at some point, I swear to you, because he
You're
stabbed
hitting
me
nerves
and
and
I
stuff.
was like jumpy and I don't know, it was a whole thing. But I get to go again next week.
Oh,
Woo!
fun.
I'm so
Hopefully
excited.
it goes a lot better then. You'll
But
have to keep
guys,
us
I have
updated.
disappointing news. I don't get to go to Val Day
Oh.
down in Texas because of this little contract they made me sign saying that I have to follow strict COVID protocols, which means no travel outside of the state. So I unfortunately will not be able to go celebrate with Lindsay and her dad and everybody else in Texas for Val
that
Day.
stinks.
Yeah, so you're gonna have to FaceTime me and like show me all the cool stuff and send me like tons of Snapchats.
Yeah, totally. I'm excited for it. I've never been to Vega. It's only a couple of hours away from me.
Oh, nice.
But you know how life gets. You
Yeah.
don't go places.
Well, I mean, 2020 made it to where we literally weren't allowed to go anywhere. So there is
Right. And
that.
now it's kind of getting to the point where you can go more places but life with kids, you kind of get stuck in the day to day, and before you know it, so much time has passed, and then
My
we
favorite
haven't done anything.
question is people ask me, "What do you do for fun?" I don't understand what do you mean
Can you
fun?
rephrase it? Rephrase your question, please.
What do I do when I'm not cleaning or eating or going to the grocery
having
store?
a debate with a 3-year-old or
Right. This morning my son got really pissed off at me because I wouldn't let him cook eggs on the stove.
Oh my gosh.
You're 7. That's not even close to happening today.
Ironically, my 9-year-old was asking me this morning if I would teach her how to cook. She specifically wants to learn how to cook her own grilled cheeses. She already knows how to do things like make toast because we don't have like a pop-up toaster. We use our microwave also can be like a convection oven.
Oh, how cool.
And so we make toast in that. And so she already knows how to do that. And like they make like nachos and quesadillas and stuff like that. She's like, I want to learn how to use the stove. And I was like, not right now, because it was 7 a.m. I was trying to make coffee and she hadn't even been to sleep yet, as far as I know.
Oh my gosh.
Well, we're not cooking grilled cheese right now. But okay.
Yeah, it's like, sorry you've been up all night raging, playing Animal Crossing. However, some of us are barely awake.
Right. And then she's like, oh, you're making coffee? Yes, I'm making coffee. Please.
So, guys, I've slacked off. I told you I would watch that Netflix movie about that book we talked about. I didn't. I got kind of sucked into a book that
yes. We are reading another book together.
We are reading another book together. Yeah. And this one's called Bloodstains, and it's by Jeff Mudgett. And it is, I mean, damn, it's good.
It's so good. It was recommended to us by Stefan, who is from Fearscape Media Network. He's a host of a couple of different podcasts on our network, like Fearscape Paranormal, Misters of the Dark, stuff like that. So you should check him out. But he texted us on our little show group chat or whatever and was like, you guys have to check out this book. It's really good. And it is. I'm sucked in. I'm almost done.
I'm about halfway done. It's okay. So the last book we talked about was like 5 whole hours. This one's like 13 hours long. But
so in comparison, it feels really long, but it is so interesting.
It's not only is it interesting, there's just so much to unpack.
Yes.
Like there's so many details, and if you don't pay enough attention, you're like, wait, what?
I have had to rewind a few times because I get distracted, like usually a kid talking to me or whatever.
Mhm.
And I'm like, what just happened? Who said what now? And like I have to rewind a little bit.
But it happens to the best of us. I mean, I do that too. My husband has this uncanny like tick where every time I'm doing something that
That's when he
requires me
wants
to
to
pay
talk.
attention to something else, he's like, "Oh, hey, babe. Oh, by the way,
That's my life. Everyone will be leaving me alone the second those earbuds go in.
somebody
It's
wants
suddenly,
you.
Mom, babe, dogs barking.
The house
You
is
all
on
did not
fire."
care. You all did not care when I was just standing there doing nothing
No.
at your beck and call. But
Absolutely.
now that I'm trying to actually listen to this. But another thing about the book, I don't recall very many audiobooks that I personally have listened to having music set to them.
I know, that's so awesome.
It feels like you're watching a movie. It really does. And I think it'd be a great movie, to be completely honest.
I do too. The only thing that annoys me about the music is when Audible changes chapters, it glitches almost.
Oh yeah, I've experienced that where I'm like, did my headphones die?
Yeah,
And-
I was like, wait, what just happened? And then it'll be like the next sentence. It's
Chapter,
like,
whatever.
oh, yeah.
But the music is so interesting. When I first started the book, I accidentally had it set to 1.5 speed. And that's because I saw a TikTok where somebody talked about listening to Audible books like on 1.5 times speed. And I had just like tested it out to see what it sounded like. And I didn't realize it on too fast a speed. And that music sped up sounds like the music you would put with like a silent movie.
Oh, how cool. Maybe they did that intentionally.
Maybe. But then I was like, why does it sound so weird? Like the words were kind of like together, like, and I'm like, what is he saying? And I opened it up and I was like, oh, turn back down to 1 time speed. Now I can understand it. And
Yeah.
But the music is really catchy too. I catch myself with it stuck in my head sometimes.
Same.
And I'll be kind of just like humming it to myself. And myself like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, it's just the music from that book.
And like, I haven't watched, but I'm usually on TikTok more often than I'd like to say. And I've only been on TikTok whenever you have personally sent me TikToks. So
really?
I haven't been
can't
on
say the
TikTok
same.
for days because I've been watching a show that I'll talk about later in the episode. And then I've been, doing research for this episode, and I've been doing a lot of shit, y'all. Besides just like day-to-day life. I mean, like podcasting ain't easy. Sometimes you got a lot of things in the mix and you got to do research. And first of all, you got to figure out what the fuck you're going to talk about because there's so many options.
It's because look, we start this podcast. It's things that we're incredibly interested in, but then the possibilities are endless and you get in that choice overload where then it's suddenly, I don't know anything that exists ever.
It's like, I've never heard of that. And then I start researching. It's like, wait, yes, I do. I know all about this.
Well, see, that happened to me earlier. I got on the subject talking about an episode of Ghost Adventures, and I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea there was an episode about that. I want to watch it. I have to find it somewhere. And then I like suddenly just had like this flash of, cause like I have a semi-photographic memory. I always used to joke that back whenever we still had film cameras, that sometimes there's no film in it.
Oh yeah.
Or in the digital age, sometimes the batteries are dead. We know now that's probably undiagnosed ADHD, but I had like that sudden flash of memory where I could remember watching this episode and I was like, wait a minute. And I like searched on my Facebook because I had talked about it on a Facebook post. And yeah, I had already seen that episode. I had already talked about that episode publicly on my Facebook. But
that's
it was
funny. Facebook memories, like sometimes they sting, based on like life experiences and things like that. And then sometimes you're just like, you think in that moment you have an original thought, and then Facebook memories will come up 2 days later and be like, you said it 5 years ago. It's like, oh.
My favorite is when you go on your Facebook memories and you're wearing the same outfit.
Oh yeah, that's so trippy. Or you're like, wait, where did that shirt go? I loved it so much.
Yes. Usually they went to my sister's closet. Thanks, Laura. But now I live far away, so my clothes are mine now. Ironically, I have some of her clothes that she left in my house the last time she visited.
That's funny. Payback. So I went to the
on.
mall. Sorry, interrupter. I went to the mall the other day, like I said, for the art gallery thing, and I was wearing my Ghost in the Attic Spies in the Basement t-shirt, and we're getting merch soon, we swear. But we just had these locally made, so we had something for when we did our promo photos.
Yeah, you can see those on our Facebook page and Instagram.
This girl goes, "Oh my God, I love that podcast." And I just like immediately zoned out, and I was like, "Oh, she's talking to somebody else."
Yeah.
And then she looked right at me. She's like, "Those girls are so hilarious." And I was like, "Holy shit, she's talking about us." And I was like,
I think I'm funny, but
"Wait, you like my podcast?" She's like, "Yeah, the one on your show." I was like, "No, that's I'm a host on that show." She goes, "Oh my God, are you Anna?" And I go, "Uh-huh." And she was like, "Me and my sister listen all the time. So shout out to the really awesome chick at the mall, because
that is so cool.
I didn't know anybody knew we existed." I mean, obviously, based on today's episode, we do now know people listen. Because spoiler, we're doing listener stories.
Right?
But
it's one of those things.
Weird. It was very surreal.
It's one of those things, you can call it imposter syndrome or whatever, where it's like when we get reached out. I was actually about to bring up one of my old friends who listens. We get reached out by people that we know personally who are like, "Oh yeah, the episode was really good." But a stranger, that's amazing. And it doesn't feel real.
No.
I mean, like I mentioned Stefan earlier, he tells us constantly that he's such fans of us. And I'm like, "Oh, but do you know us?"
Right? It's like, are you sure you're listening to the right podcast? So you said you got a message from a friend?
First of all, I've gotten messages from 2 different friends about the podcast. One is my friend Kelsey. I have like a bunch of Kelseys. This is the one that lives in Texas. And she said that she listens to it all the time. She makes her mom and her boyfriend and everybody else listen to it.
Oh,
so that's like so nice.
Yes,
thank you, Kelsey.
Thank you. Thank you for getting us out there to more people so we can annoy the masses. I mean, entertain the masses.
But then I actually got a message from my old, we were like best friends, like middle high school. We went to the same college when I actually went to college for like a year. And she messaged me. We talk occasionally, not as often as like some of my other old friends, but like we do talk occasionally. But I haven't heard from her in a while. And she messaged me seemingly out of the blue the other day and thanked us for having a podcast and said that we have been an important part of like escapism for her. And like I could have cried. And then she said that she heard me mention last episode where I think I have ADHD, but I've never sought a diagnosis and stuff because it's kind of something that I've just realized in the last almost 2 years. And she gave me some resources for that, including like a podcast to listen to, which of course in true ADHD fashion, I have not listened to it yet. But
we've been so enthralled in that book too.
Yeah, we've been listening to that book. Yeah,
we haven't had much else going on.
Yay, hyper focus. But so that was really sweet. So thank you, Lindsay. I appreciated that a lot.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, you're gonna have to read to me what she said later when we're not like on air. But I can't wait to hear this because we've said it 1,000 times and we'll say it again. We do this for us because it's something that we personally are interested in. But if we can make this enjoyable for other people, that's like the ultimate goal, is that we can create this little family of people who are interested in the weird and strange and unimaginably awful things that spark our interest and get us excited and scared and paranoid sometimes, you know, like
it's very validating to hear like, oh, we're not talking to a void. People not only listen to it like, ugh, we know these people, we have to listen, like they enjoy it, and like we're having some sort of impact, even if it's as simple as like, that was entertaining for the last 45 minutes.
Like, thank you for getting me out of my head for a little bit. Like that means a lot, because
it really does. We had no idea it would have that sort of impact on anybody, let alone like to hear it specifically happen to somebody. It's amazing.
Yeah. Well, and like I first started listening, my very first podcast was My Favorite Murder. My friend Michelle told me about it, like, I don't even know how many years ago. And I was like, listen, I don't know about this podcast stuff. Like,
oh, I was the same way.
I don't like talk radio. I'm not a big fan of like morning chit chat radio because I listen to the radio for music.
Right.
So I wasn't sure how I'd enjoy a podcast. And then I really fell in love with My Favorite Murder, Wine and Crimes, and This Is Why We Drink, Two Girls, One Ghost, just to name a very small few that I listen to outside of the Fearscape Media Network. And there's just so many interesting people out there with different ways to look at the world. And it really just, I don't know, it's something that I thoroughly enjoy. So whenever I finally got the guts up to bring it up to Lindsay, like, hey, let's jump outside of our comfort zone, way off into the deep end of the ocean, and let's start a podcast.
It's especially funny because we're both writers and we talk constantly about how we prefer everything to be in writing because that's how our brains work. So what do? We started a podcast where we're talking.
And we have to read things out loud, which we both suck at. So
everyone has begged us to do Audible books for our books, and we're like, no, we can't read out loud.
No, because also, fun fact, if you're not a writer, if you write something and you read it enough times, you are convinced it is terrible.
Yes.
So I don't know. I've read Lost in Grey like 22 times.
I have not read Lost in Grey since we published it in 2017. I can't. I'm always like, I really want to read it.
That's a lie. You read it before we did our interview with Stefan.
No, I didn't.
No?
I only read part of it.
Oh, you only read?
Well, I think I read like an excerpt or something.
You read some of it. There's that.
I read Paranormal-ish because it's really short.
But it's hard to read your own work, and it's super fun trying to edit these episodes because we stumble and stutter, and then
I can identify what the wavelength looks like of me saying, but
yeah, that one too.
It looks like a little bug. It looks like a little bug. One day I'll have to like take a screenshot of it as I'm editing to show you guys the shape that I hate on the sound wave.
We should take that little thing, digitize it, and make it a t-shirt.
We should.
That'd be great.
That'd be hilarious. You all have no idea how many at least when I edit, how many I cut out because I drive myself insane hearing myself say, or
the long pauses where we're trying to remember where we stopped reading. That's fun too. Oh yeah, speaking of why we're here, let's tell a story.
Oh yeah, we should do that.
Sorry guys, this is the banter part of the episode, and we'll probably get more of it later because this is how our brains work. So we're doing something kind of weird this time because it is our first listener episode. Creatures of habit. We had to do like a small little story. We just did little stories this week. Mine is going to be paranormal, and it is about the Crybaby Bridge in Oklahoma. Now, I'm just going to directly read from these two websites. I kind of just threw it together. Crybaby Bridge, they're reported all over Oklahoma and several other places in the United States. But I'm only talking about Oklahoma because that's where I live. And so that's where I heard about it the most, if that makes sense. It says, Crybaby bridges are bridges that are reported to be haunted by mothers or their babies. According to local legend, Catatusa, Oklahoma woman raced across Old Boggy Creek Bridge on Friday, June 13th of 1924. A fierce storm had broken out and the woman was trying to hurry home. The only other passenger was her newborn baby, which resided in the front seat beside her. As the mother and child crossed the bridge, a crackle of lightning frightened the horses that were pulling her carriage, and they bucked wildly and tipped over the carriage.
Oh my gosh.
Now, this is really sad. During all of this, the mother lost her infant. She frantically searched in the pouring rain, crying out for her baby, and she could hear the baby crying from the river below. It says she leaned over the edge of the damaged bridge and doing so, lost her footing and also fell into the river. They were never seen again. It's said that if you go to this bridge on Friday the 13th of all days, you can still hear the baby crying. Each year following the accident, roses were placed at the two unmarked graves near the bridge. The deceased are claimed to be Bessie and Clissie, Clissie. Sorry if I say that really, really wrong. They were written on headstones like decades later. The bridge was bypassed in 2001 and is no longer open to the public, but is still very clearly visible from Keatonville Road. Numerous local legends have tried to explain the phenomenon. Many visitors to the bridge report babies crying and apparitions of the mother. Yeah.
You all can't see me. My eyes won't ride.
They're actually crybaby bridges reported all over the country. This particular bridge is at the end of a road in disrepair and it's not in use anymore. Not many people visit anymore due to the conditions of the road and the bridge. Probably not allowed to be perfectly honest. There's probably a no trespassing sign. But if you do dare to visit, be sure and watch your step. Be careful. It's one of those things like you always hear about going over railroad tracks where there have been accidents and you
like the school bus children push you over the track.
You put baby powder on your car and you can see handprints.
There's a place like that in my hometown, allegedly.
Yeah.
My friends and I tried to find it once when I was like a sophomore or a junior in high school, and we ended up in some back road I'd never been on before, and I couldn't even tell you where exactly it was, and never found shit. But
yeah,
we tried. I think that is one of those things that pop up everywhere.
So yeah, this bridge is like beyond repair, abandoned, and the forest is starting to take over where it's at now. For instance, the trees are growing around the rusty metal, which is, I think, as a photographer, which would be like an extremely cool photo to take.
Yeah, it really would.
They don't keep maintenance up on it or anything like that. And I wanted to put out on Facebook about Crybaby Bridge, but I've been busy. So I forgot to ask anybody. But if any of our Oklahoma listeners, or if you have Crybaby Bridges where you're currently at,
yes,
or something similar to that, send us in a story, message us on Facebook, leave us a comment on our Facebook page, something like that. We'd love to hear your creepy local legends.
Yeah, that's
and
really cool.
For me, that is the nightmare-inducing thought of driving across a bridge in Oklahoma called Crybaby Bridge in Catatusa, Oklahoma.
I mean, a lot of cases, driving over a bridge can be unnerving anyways. I remember in particular,
especially wooden bridges. Oh my God.
Oh yes. I remember in particular when my friend Kelsey and I, the one from that I grew up with or whatever, we went to Washington State after we graduated high school. And I remember, first of all, who let us go across the country by ourselves at 17 and freshly turned 18. I turned 18 while we were there. And everything was kind of like flying by the seat of our pants, trying to like figure it all out. And I remember we were suddenly going over this bridge and it seemed like it was floating on the water. And maybe it was, I don't know. I'm not familiar enough with Washington. I was a teenager.
Yeah.
And, but so it just makes me think like bridges are scary as it is. And then you add in, it's an old wooden bridge and allegedly there's a ghost and a baby ghost at that. And it's a lot, adds to the nightmare fuel there.
Yeah, it does. Because you always hear about the woman in white.
And that's what I was thinking of. The episode of Supernatural's on a bridge, the woman in white.
And she loses her children. And so I'm trying not to give away spoilers because some people are behind. One. Is it season 1? Oh wow.
It's season 1.
There's so many seasons of that show. Well, spoiler, she's not a very good mom. That's Crybaby Bridge, and it's always intrigued me. I've always wanted to go to it, but now that I know that the trees are wrapping around the old bridge, as long as I won't get arrested for trespassing, then I want to go and take pictures of that bridge because I think it'd be really cool. Just not on Friday the 13th because I'm not trying to catch up with a ghost.
Friday the 13th is like my favorite.
So you went all the way to Washington. Why did you go to Washington?
Twilight. And so this was pre-movies, let it be known. Kelsey asked if I wanted to go, and it was right before the Breaking Dawn book came out. And
cool.
We went up to Forks for the book release. It was really cool. They had like a little town event, and I won a raffle with like some t-shirts and stuff. Ended the trip in Seattle, and that's where I spent my 18th birthday going around Seattle. Went to the very first Starbucks, which if you know me is like perfect place for me to go for my 18th birthday is to a Starbucks. And but it was actually really funny. We're talking about creepy things, of course, because that's our podcast. When we went to Washington, of course, most of y'all probably know Kurt Cobain's house, and there's tours where you can drive by.
I want to go to there.
And so we go to this tour bus place, I don't know. And we're like, okay, yeah, we need tickets for that tour. And they're like, yeah, okay, here you go. We buy them, and we're like sitting there in the waiting area waiting for the bus to come to load us up. And then they're like, all right, everybody, let's go. And we're walking, and we're like, I thought we were supposed to get on a bus. Like, what's going on here? And then suddenly we're walking down underground.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm laughing so hard. We had apparently bought tickets for a historic tour, and
Oh.
years ago, Seattle used to be lower.
Okay.
So a lot of the original town is still there underground.
That's not terrifying at all. Is that where the lizard people live?
We thought something was gonna get us. There's pictures of us like huddled together, like where are we? What is happening? And it just turns out we just bought tickets to the wrong tour because we were 18-year-olds across the country by ourselves, traveling by ourselves for the first time ever.
Oh my gosh. That's so scary. I would have freaked the fuck out. Like,
Yeah, we were very, very nervous, but I mean, it was pretty interesting. There's like a whole lot down there. There's like a really old toilet somewhere. I have like one of those like smashed pennies, like from the machines, and it's like a picture of like the old toilet that's down there. I don't know. It's so long ago now because I'm
if you
almost
ever go
31.
to Seattle, check out the weird underground tour
If
that
you
Lindsay
ever go to
accidentally went
Seattle, pay attention to what tour tickets you're buying.
to. Right?
We were not expecting that. We were expecting to go on a bus and drive around and see these houses, and then we were suddenly in the sewers. Well, I don't know if it's considered sewers, but we were underground in some sort.
Like, kind of like the catacombs of Seattle.
Right, like it was terrifying. Now, as an adult and like, knowing how to research things ahead of time, it would probably be a very interesting tour. But the entire time we're sitting here like, the fuck is going on?
Right.
Because we thought we were supposed to be going to see Kurt Cobain's house.
Did you ever
my
make it?
little no.
No.
Why for any other tours after that? That or you're just so terrified
Yeah.
that like okay, trip's done.
And we're going home. All right. So
yes.
Did you pick a short dive into the true crime or the paranormal today?
Mine is true crime. It's really funny. I came across this story. We had said that we were going to do a listener stories episode. And then I texted Anna and was like, hey, but I actually found this story. It's pretty short, so I'm going to cover it too. I came across a listicle that was called 5 True Crime Stories More Interesting Than Another Ted Bundy Movie.
I mean,
so of course I had to click it. But I came across this story though, and it was pretty high up on the list. I don't remember where it was, but I stopped reading the rest of the list because it.
Hi, puppy. That's funny. So this listicle that you got drawn into, it was the most interesting story you found. So I'm intrigued. What did you find?
So this is a story. I'd never heard of it before. It's the murder of Angela Somota, but more specifically, how her friend helped solve the murder years later.
Oh, how fantastic.
Right? So let's go back to Dallas, 1984. Angela Angie Somota and Sheila Wasaki. I never caught how to say her last name, so I do apologize if that's incorrect. It looks like Wasaki.
Okay.
But they were college roommates attending the Southern Methodist University. On October 12th, 1984, Angie went out for drinks with some friends, and Sheila had been back home for the weekend. She was off campus, and when she returned to her dorm, her phone was ringing, and she answered it, and it was one of Angie's sorority sisters breaking the horrible news to her that, to Sheila, that Angie had been raped and murdered in her own home that weekend.
No.
Yeah. And she had been stabbed 18 times, had broken bones, and it was even said that she was so bloody that it was as though her heart had been cut out.
Oh my
It
God.
was just such a bloody mess. It was absolutely horrible. Of course, the police go through, like, they're looking into friend's boyfriend, like, hey, what do you think of her boyfriend? Like, what kind of people was she around? What was her schedule like? The typical investigative questions.
It feels like a crime of passion to be stabbed 18 times as well.
Right. And so they're just trying to piece together what happened. And but in the meantime, without knowing what happened, Sheila became very fearful, understandably so.
Right.
She didn't want to go out anywhere, and it ultimately led to her dropping out of college and moving back home.
That's
can't-
heartbreaking.
Can't blame her. Like, that's
Well,
awful.
to know that it happened is awful, but to happen where you live is worse.
I did get a little confused. I didn't, because I knew it needed to be a short story, I did not do a deep dive. And so I was a little confused. Maybe they weren't roommates anymore. Because
Maybe they were at one point roommates and then she
but
joined
they
the
still were
sorority.
great friends. Right.
Yeah.
So I got a little confused about that. But still, it's still terrifying. It's because it'd be terrifying to hear that something like that happened in the town you were in, let alone to your best friend.
Right. That's just.
And then so she left college, and unfortunately, the summer of 1985, the case went cold.
That's horrible.
But things changed in 1994. At this point, Sheila had moved to Nashville. She'd got married. She has a family. The video that I watched that went with this said that she did all of that. Like, she moved, got married, had a family, but she never forgot about her friend. And she stated, "I actually don't think I ever moved on from that, to be very frank." And how could you move on from something so traumatic like that?
I couldn't.
Especially, like, she was so close. You never learn what really happened, and you just have to keep living. That's awful. But like I said, things changed that year. She, like many other people in the country at the time, was watching the OJ trial.
Okay.
And they brought up DNA testing because it's still pretty new. And so she was like, "Oh, what's that? Like, I've kind of heard about DNA, like, but what does this mean?" And they explained in the trial, like, stuff, the trial coverage about it being like how they use it in terms of forensic evidence and stuff like that. And she started to feel a little bit of hope because she knew that there was DNA from Angie's murder. She knew there was semen, there was some fingernails, and they even had a blood type.
Oh, that's awesome.
But it wasn't a thing in the 80s to be able to just send that off to a lab. And so she did research, and she found an organization in New York who she contacted about it. And because she was not law enforcement, they could not work with her. So she calls the Dallas police to ask to speak with the detective in charge of the case. And she doesn't get a call back. She called several times. I think she said 50 times, and they just continued to blow her off. And she kept trying to call and get somebody to do something about this case. And so it's like, but that wasn't going to stop her. And instead of giving up when all of her calls went unreturned, she decided she was going to become a private investigator to see if she could get the DNA tested herself.
Hell yeah.
And so by 2005, she did just that. She got her private investigator's license. And like, how Veronica Mars. I know that she's not a teenager, but how Veronica Mars. But and then it turned out, like, when she did all of this, she couldn't just take the DNA and like go get it tested or whatever. But it got the Dallas Police Department's attention, and in 2006 they reopened the case and assigned a new detective to it.
That's awesome.
And so they continue investigating the murder of Angela Somota, and together they worked towards getting the DNA tested. But due to the backlog, it took about 2 years to get the results back.
Oh man.
Yeah. Insert in the backlog. When the results came back, they actually did not match any of the potential suspects from the original investigation.
Oh no. I mean, that's heartbreaking because then you feel like you have nowhere to go, but there's so much DNA evidence in the system already that maybe they could find something there.
We'll see. But about that day where they get the results back, Sheila said, quote, "It was a bad day. Finding out was so devastating because everything I knew my entire life, everything I was told, the person, the circumstances was completely wrong. So that takes you to what is actually real."
Well, yeah.
Like, makes you kind of question your entire reality.
Well, and not even just that, but like, let's say Joe Schmo is who they pointed the finger at, and he's the reason she's no longer here. You would end up despising that person and hold so much hatred in your heart.
It didn't mention in this video, like I said, I did not do a deep dive. It did not mention in this video who the original suspects were, but knowing how a lot of cases go, my guess would be, like, what if it was her boyfriend at the time? And then he's now suffered this devastating loss as well. as well as people thinking he potentially did it. This is all conjecture. Like, I'm not saying that he was a suspect. I don't know.
It's all speculation. Yeah.
But also at this point, if it took 2 years for the DNA and all that, like we're looking at like 2007, 2008, and the murder happened in 1984.
Oh man.
So that's over 20 years thinking they knew a little bit and then finding out none of it was true. But they did get a DNA match of somebody who was already in the system.
Oh, nice.
It was it matched with convicted rapist Donald Best, who was already serving a life sentence in prison since 1985. So right after her murder.
Wow.
And in 2010, Best was convicted of the murder of Angela Somota.
That's fantastic.
And was sentenced to death because of it. And as of the time of the video, which I didn't even think to look at what year the video was created, he was on death row still. While it's great to us objectively that the cold case was solved, life isn't as simple as just closing a chapter and moving on.
No.
And in the video, we're gonna see if I can get through this without crying, because I cried watching the video when she said this. It just tore me apart. She said, when Donald Best was convicted, there was absolutely no closure. She's still dead.
That's horrible. Yeah.
The people who talk about closure, they've really never been through something like that. So when people say, don't you feel better? Don't you feel some accomplishment? No, she's still dead. And I've got tears in my eyes right now.
I feel that on a very personal, private level.
Yes, which is why I'm crying right now.
Yeah, which is why I'm glad I have Xanax in my system. Because it makes me numb. Well, it doesn't make me numb. It makes me less emotional, and that's not always a bad thing.
Yeah, because on the surface, sure, it's justice, but it's not, though, because they're still gone.
Yeah, there's nothing that can ever bring back that person. And, is vindicated as you may feel to know that you did something to help your friend, even though they're no longer with you, to help their family, to help those who love them. It doesn't bring back their smile. It doesn't bring back their laugh. It doesn't bring back their hug. So it's just,
yeah, I just
heartbreaking.
I just ended it feeling like, I hope she knows that she did do something big and something great for her friend.
Yeah.
And I understand there is no closure in a situation like that, because at the end of the day, there's still a piece of you missing. But I hope that she is able to somewhat find some peace with what happened.
Yeah, I mean, the good news is he never got out on parole and didn't do it again. So
yeah, so she still did great things.
She did absolutely amazing, and that's what true friendship is.
Yes, and I just know that if I was ever murdered suspiciously, you would do the same.
I already have a list in mind of who I would check off the list first.
Yeah, that is the very...
And it's not her husband, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, the husband didn't do it in this case. But no,
maybe the dog. He did try to break your jaw this year.
I think he did. Not broke. I think he dislocated my jaw.
Loki's suspect number one.
Yes. But so yeah, there is the probably intensely condensed story of Angela Somota and the badassery that was or is Sheila Wasaki. I'm pretty sure she's still a private investigator, at least at the time of this video.
Oh wow.
And
so she can help other people. That's so fantastic.
Yeah. And I just love the idea of, well, if they're not gonna fix this, I am.
Yeah. Because unfucking fortunately, a lot of the time, a specific type of person will leave it vague. Women get dismissed a lot because we don't know things, but we kind of do, because we're just people too.
Yeah.
So, I'm glad she was able to figure out how to work the system in her benefit and her friends' benefit and her family's benefit to get the DNA evidence tested. And she may never have that closure that she's longing for, but I feel that there is some closure knowing that justice was served, which is nice. So before we start crying, let's get into some spooky shit.
Yeah. Change the subject.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to share some personal stories now before we get into our listener stories, because everybody that I've ever talked to has something weird or hinky that's happened to him, whether it's a night hag, reoccurring nightmares, a dream that turns out to eventually happen similarly to what you dreamed, if not exactly what you dreamed.
Yeah.
So we're going to start with some personal stories, and I'm going to go first since Lindsay just finished talking, give her a chance to like not be emotional, because you can still see in her face that she's a little pink.
Oh, yeah.
She's still just feeling it a little bit.
I'm good. I'm good.
Okay. I still feel it. I'm just
yeah.
medicated.
I'm just caffeinated.
I'm barely
I grabbed my
caffeinated.
coffee when I said that. I realized that joke didn't pan out over audio.
So I have 3 little personal accounts. I'll start with the one that terrified the absolute fuck out of me when I was like 16 and a half, almost 17, somewhere in there. I'm driving down the road that like there's a main road and then there's a side road. So I got off the main road in town to the side road that leads towards my house. And there's a little bitty side road. It's just like a mile long in between all these houses. And I see a bicycle fly out in front of me. And as I skid on my brakes to stop, there's no impact. And I stop the car, get out. There's no bicycle person to be found.
What?
There's no bike. There's no person. There's no damage to my car. There's jack shit, y'all. And it was not okay. And
is that what inspired you for Lost and Grey?
I mean, no, but if you really want to break it down, maybe subconsciously.
Maybe on a subconscious level, you remember.
Yeah. But
that's really, not a spoiler, it's the front cover.
It is. But it fucked with me because I thought I ran someone over.
Well, yeah.
Thankfully, I did not, because I was getting off work from Brahms, which is an ice cream and dairy store that is in the
groceries. It's the weirdest
it's got a market in there. They got food and they got ice cream. It's a little bit of all in one. But it's
one-stop shop.
It's local to Oklahoma and the surrounding states, very small local surrounding states, but because they keep everything from their own dairy farms, which is kind of cool. But so yeah, I didn't hit anybody. However, I really thought that I had.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
happening.
That was fun to see. Like, I don't even know what that would be. Like, would that be what do they call that when they're
residual?
On a loop? Yeah, residual
haunting.
Yeah, it had to have been like a residual haunting where it was just like a loop. And I never did any research to find out if somebody had died in a bicycling accident in that exact spot. Because for one, I was 16, 17 years old. I didn't want to know. And also now I can't remember like
the details enough
to get into it, and also still don't want to know.
Sometimes it's hard to find, because like my sister and I years ago tried to do research on the land where our childhood home is, because the home was a new build, but the land was not.
Right.
And we tried so hard to figure out if something had happened on that land that would cause weird stuff to happen. And we've only found like a couple of things where we came up with some theories, but it was all just us coming up with our own shit based off of very minimal information. So you can't get some answers.
This one's not like my personal firsthand, but it's just something weird that my family member has been through. So my sister-in-law, Melissa, and her husband, James, they rented out like this upstairs apartment.
Okay.
Sounds normal enough. The building downstairs was for sale, or maybe the whole building was for sale. But the history behind it was a fucking funeral home. So she lived in the upstairs portion of a funeral home.
Oh my gosh.
And while she told me she never felt anything, saw anything, several people in our family were like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. That place was haunted. Like my sister-in-law, my husband's other sister, Sandy said that she felt an energy, like I can't remember if she recalled seeing something, but she felt an energy. Both her kids said it was haunted, that one of them refused to go up there. I went up there and all I knew that the floor creaked more than it ought to.
Ugh.
It just like, it always sounded like that house was settling, but it wasn't like windy outside or anything. And
those kind of sounds goes into the personal story I was gonna share. But go on, you can finish.
And then so that's that little tidbit. And then I'm gonna end on a lighthearted note. So when I was like living at home, my great aunt raised me for half of my life. So that's where this comes into play. My great aunt has always said our house was haunted. Like, it's haunted. She's seen ghosts, she's seen demons. Like, it's not, well, demons, like shadow figures, like whatever. Probably a demon. She swears the house is haunted. No, I've never seen anything in this house. So I didn't believe her. Me and Megan, a friend of mine, were sitting there one day, and it's like 1:00 in the morning. Megan was my brother's like living fiance. And we had like a multi-family home. Like, it was like a whole thing. They were building a house. So it was like they were staying with us temporarily. We're in there like 1:00 in the morning eating tomatoes because that was the only snack there was that wasn't going to make a ton of noise like popcorn would.
Right.
And so we're just sitting there chilling, eating, all the tomatoes that we wanted because they're not a very filling snack. Janice runs in. This woman has arthritis and bone problems like to the nines.
I can't picture Janice running.
I know, right? She ran from the hallway to the kitchen, which is a pretty good sized living room.
I've been to that house.
And she slams her hands on the counter and she goes, "He's back."
No, why'd she say it like that?
I don't know. That's exactly how she said it. And me and Megan just stop and stare because we're at the kitchen table. And she just turned around and slowly walked off like she didn't even talk to us.
No.
And so we're like, okay, so her blood sugar's low, her diabetes is acting up, like something's off with Janice.
Something's wrong. Yeah.
So we tell Gary, like, hey, I think, which is her husband. I was like, something's wrong with Janice. Like, he's like, oh, no, something's wrong with this house. And then he just left and went to bed. And we're like, oh, yes, we're going to go watch a movie. So we went out into Megan's room off the kitchen and shut the door, turned on the show. No idea what we watched because I'm traumatized from this. Thanks to my family. So the next thing you know, we hear beating on the door that goes to Megan's room. Then there's beating on the windows outside.
Oh no.
And the door that leads, because it was an add-on to the house, so there's an additional like entryway.
Yeah.
So that door starts wiggling like someone's trying to get in. My brother's a cop. Well, my adopted brother, but like whatever, he's a cop. So we're trying to get him on the phone because he's working nights. He's in a different town, like working for a different police station. Like, he can't come to us. So we call my sister who lives behind us. And I'm like, hey, something's going on. We think Megan's, because she had a stalker at the time. I'm not going to say his name because we don't give dirty people any credit. Right. But we're like, we think her stalker's back. Like, I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on. And then the garage door started opening and closing.
Oh, God.
The organ and the piano both started playing in the house. And then the power goes on and off. And I was like, what the fuck? I'm like 16, 17 years old, losing my shit because it's the middle of the night and it's just me and Megan. We have no way to protect ourselves. And so we call Tammy, my sister, and she comes down. She got 2 little kids. We woke her up. She has to work in the morning. She is not a happy camper. Mm-mm. She comes down there and we didn't know it was her. And the door to Megan's room just flies open and we are like clasping each other, screaming like banshees. She goes, shut the fuck up. You're going to wake up the whole house. I was like, where?
You cut out. I think you got too high.
I got too high pitched. Sorry. I was like, we're going to wake up the house. The whole house is freaking out. Like, what is going on? She goes, Mom. And so Janice just comes in there cackling. And I was like, so confused. Like, if you could see my face right now, I look like a deer in headlights. And me and Megan are just like still grabbing each other. Like, but we're not crying or screaming anymore. We're just freaked out. And Janice goes, maybe you should ask before you eat someone else's food. So she fucking hardcore. I've never been pranked in my life like this. She hardcore pranked us because we ate her tomatoes.
And Gary was in on it?
And her husband was in on it. Yeah. I mean, if that's not marriage goals, though, I don't know what is. Like, he was outside ringing the doorbells. He was slamming the doors shut while she was opening and closing the garage door.
Physical effort to go through.
At 1:30 in the morning is when it all ended, and I was terrified. So
maybe next time, just like, hey, I was saving those. Can you please not eat them?
Yeah, no, she thought it would be fun to fuck with us, and she has a funny sense of humor. But like, that messed me up like so hard.
I've been pranked before.
I've never eaten food at her house without permission. I will let you know that after that day.
Right? Because like we've been pranked before. I've mentioned before I used to work in a haunted house, and before I really got involved in the haunted house, they had been doing it since like 1984 or something like that. And I can't remember if it was mine and my sister's birthday party or if we just had a sleepover.
Right.
I think it may have been a birthday party. We had a tent in the backyard. So like half of us were out in the tent, half of us were inside watching a movie. And those of us that were inside with the movie suddenly start hearing screams coming from the tent outside. Because Michael Myers had crashed my party. And it turns out it was Mark, my friend Alyssa, like her uncle who ran the haunted house.
Oh my gosh.
So like I've been pranked in like a horror fashion, but never like that.
And I mean, wow. The organ going and the piano making screechy sounds, like
that's a lot of effort. Like
it was a lot of effort, and apparently those tomatoes really fucking mattered to her. I don't know if that was like her I don't know. Listen, you've met Janice.
Yeah.
She's very much
there was some premeditation in that because she made a point to come in and say he's back.
Yeah, well, because like we don't believe her about the ghost in the house because me and Megan hadn't seen it. And I don't know if the ghost had been brought up that night or the day before or something.
But was there ever even actually a ghost, or was it just to lead up to this?
So my brother, who did not write into the podcast, my like adopted brother, said that he saw, like, he had like sleep paralysis and saw like a dark figure in the corner of his room when he lived there. Janice has seen figures like in the house. I personally have never seen the black shadow man that walks around the house.
Is it the Hat Man that they did like a documentary on?
Oh Lord, I hope not.
There's apparently like some sort of spirit or something that looked like a man looking at like I think it's a top hat. Okay. Or bowler hat, some sort of like hat.
Older hat,
like,
yeah.
It's a phenomenon that like several people have experienced.
See, and like I don't know, because I personally haven't seen the shadow person in the house.
Oh, I got chills.
But yeah, that was one summer evening I will never forget. Another one is where my friend at the time ditched me at the mall, which is like 2 miles from my house if you take the back road. Maybe a mile. I don't know. It felt like the longest walk of my life. She ditched me to go hang out with her boyfriend that they were fighting or something. I don't know. Didn't want to do it in front of people. I get that.
Right. Yeah.
So they leave me at the mall. My other friend is supposed to come pick me up. Never happens. So I said, I have a curfew. I ain't getting grounded over this crap. So I decide to walk home down the country road. You remember that dirt road we drove from Janice's? Yep. Yeah, I walked that in the middle of the night.
Whoa, that's freaky to drive down in the daytime.
It was not fun. I was terrified of snakes more than most things. But it looked like I was walking into what would be like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre situation, because there's all these old barns on these roads and you know what I mean? Like, it's just, and then cars kept coming by and slowing down to ask if I wanted rides. I was like, no, I didn't have a cell phone.
Ted Bundy.
Yeah, I didn't have a cell phone at the time because I'm old. And so, you know, like, it was super fun. So, I mean, nothing's paranormal happened, but that like made me very uneasy because like several cars tried to take me places. So those are my little accounts of the true crime, and well, I say true crime, like could have been a
Felt
kidnapping.
like it could be true crime.
Yeah, and then my little ghosty stories. So
yeah. And hey, teens, if any teens listen to this, don't just abandon your friends at places if you're their ride.
It's freaking rude.
That's how people up and vanish and get kidnapped on dirt roads.
All right, so those were my listener stories. Do you want to tell us some of your listener stories or listener stories?
Like personal stories?
Personal stories.
Personal stories. Okay.
The next line on my note says listener stories, so that's exactly
gotcha.
where my brain went.
You had mentioned like the house, like the funeral home house creaking too much, and that's what reminded me of one of the stories that I have to talk about today. One of my personal stories. About 6 years ago or so, we lived in a rental house. I call it the house of 1,000 creatures instead of like house of 1,000 corpses. Because it attracted anything and everything. I think the only thing I can think of off the top of my head that we never saw was like a bat or something. Like there was always something happening in that house. But it was a weird house, and it was an older home. I don't remember the year it was built, but it hadn't been taken care of very much before we moved into it. It was a whole thing, but it did always make like those like house settling type sounds, and like there was like the typical cracks you see on the walls from like a house settling and stuff. And so every time I heard these weird noises, I just played it off as that, except for one time I remember specifically in this house it had like a, what is it called, a galley kitchen. It had like that type of kitchen, and so it's like real narrow, so I'm mopping it, you're just like bump 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 like back and forth, and I remember pushing the mop bump into the garage door, because the garage door is right there at like what's the quote unquote dining room, but it was barely room for a table. But the garage doors are there, and I go back, forward, bump into the garage door, back, forward, bump into the garage door. And in that same cadence, it went bump, bump, back from the garage.
No.
So I put that mop down and I ran out.
Yeah.
And so it was always just like little things like that. But I was like, this is a new to us house. We haven't lived here very long. I just haven't learned the sounds of it yet.
Right.
Despite the fact that no house is settling to the beat of you mopping. But
yeah, it's like something was knocking back at you.
And it was so unnerving. And but like I said, like when creepy things like that are happening, you find an explanation for it.
Yeah.
For your own sanity's sake. But at the time, my oldest, who's now almost 10, she was probably 3, no older than 4. And my second born was a baby. And so, yeah, that means that the oldest would have had to have been 3, because she turned 3 shortly after the baby was born. Okay. We are getting ready to go run errands. I think we were going grocery shopping, something like that. She's playing in my bathroom while I'm like getting the baby ready, changing diapers, like all that. And then I ask her if she's ready to go. And she waves at my mirror and goes, "Bye, ghost."
But I don't like that at all.
I don't either. But at this time, she was going through a phase where all she wanted to watch was Scooby-Doo, Billy and Mandy's Grim Adventures, or whatever it is, Courage the Cowardly Dog,
Monster High.
Yeah, she was into all of those types of things. And so, like, of course, that's what her play is going to be like. And so, but I'm a little freaked out. And so I kind of push a little bit. And I'm like, my ghost, like, what are you talking about? Like, what does the ghost look like? Thinking she's going to describe something that I'm going to be like, oh, that's from that episode of Scooby-Doo or something. Like, I was expecting a description of some sort of cartoon character. And instead, her face goes really serious as she's staring in the mirror in my bathroom. And you can kind of see like the gears turning in her head as she's trying to think of the words to describe. And she draws one finger across her throat and scratches.
Oh, hell no.
So I am like chills all over my body, but trying not to freak out the toddler. I'm like, you ready to go grocery shopping? Please, let's go.
Right? Like, let's get the fuck out of here.
What was even more bizarre, because first of all, I don't expect a 3-year-old to know like the finger across the throat movement.
Right.
And she does not remember this. At least the last time I brought it to her a couple of years ago, she has no recollection of this, which makes sense. She was 3. But at her old school before we moved out here, she had a theater class. And I remember probably around 2018, she tells me about how in theater class, they learned that this movement, the finger across the throat, means like dying. And I was like, and you didn't know that before today? She's like, no, we learned it in theater class, but you didn't know it before today. But that means. And she's like, no. And so my head's like, so what the fuck? And I'm like, you all can't see me. I'm sitting there, I keep doing my finger across my throat. How did she do that? Or how did she know to do that? Something was wrong with that house. And I don't miss it. Like, I appreciate it. It was our first home in Texas. It was where we brought our second born. It was her first home ever. I do not miss it. There was something off with that
But
house.
it's like a good riddance type
exactly.
feeling.
It's like, thanks for the memories, even if they weren't so good.
Right.
But so yeah, I don't know what was up with that. Still freaks me out to this day. Oh, and also I mentioned too when you were talking about my sister and I trying to do research on the land of our childhood home. So our childhood home, my mom still currently lives there, and it was a new build when we moved in back in like God, what, 98 or something like that. I'm sure my mom or somebody's gonna be like, oh, actually it was this year, but it was somewhere around there. And but weird things have definitely happened there, despite it being a new build, which is why I'll always say it doesn't matter, because like, this land is old, this planet is old. It doesn't matter if your house was just built.
Absolutely.
The land's been there for ages. And but the very first ghost I ever saw was I woke up, I was probably around 9 or 10, I don't know. I remember being pretty young but old enough to remember. And I woke up in the middle of the night and I saw a silhouette sitting at the foot of my bed. And I kind of sat there for a minute, you know, like trying to wake up, like, who could possibly be sitting on my bed right now? Mm-hmm. And the shape of the silhouette made me think of like a short, kind of like poofy hairdo.
Oh yeah, like a beehive.
No, it's like where it's like short hair, like how my granny's hair is. My mom's hair.
Yeah.
It's how their hair's been like that like my entire life. But so I'm thinking, oh, it's my memo sitting on the foot of the bed. And then I remembered my memo lives like hours away and she's not visiting right now.
Oh no.
And so I hid under the blanket, like, go back to sleep, go back to sleep, go back to sleep. And then I went back to sleep. But it was one of those things I always had the feeling after the fact that it seemed like maybe it was an old style do, maybe like a early 1900s, late 1800s, like messy bun look, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
And that's just always like the vibe I got once I realized like it's not my memo. And like I would occasionally, okay, I'm trying to think of how to describe this. It's not like intrusive thoughts, but it's also not seeing something where you kind of feel like, if I open this door, this is what I'm going to see.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I don't know if it would be like an intuition on the supernatural level. Like I would sometimes feel that, especially like in the master bedroom, bathroom. Mama, if you're listening to this, I am so sorry. I'm not trying to scare you. She still lives there. But I would sometimes get the vibe that like if I opened up that bathroom door, I'm going to see like a skeletal being, but like with that hairdo and all of that.
It's kind of like when you check your shower before you go pee or whatever. Right. Yeah.
But it was more like a intuitional like vibe type feeling, and it kind of went along with the shape of the silhouette I had seen. And maybe it was me freaking myself out, but like these were like years apart feelings.
Right.
And I found out a couple of years ago, now that I've lived out of that house for over a decade, that apparently several people in our neighborhood have seen a woman. And so it's kind of thought maybe it's the land. We already kind of suspected it was the land, but then because we had a friend who had an aunt that lived in another part of our neighborhood, like our same neighborhood, and she was house sitting and woke up and saw the woman.
Nope. Don't like that at all.
Right. And then a bunch of weird stuff has happened in that house. One thing I always remember, I always feel like it's some sort of trickster of some sort. I don't know if you would call it a poltergeist or what, but I specifically remember I used to wear contacts. Okay. And I didn't like taking a shower in them because I was always like worried that the water's gonna get in them, like it's gonna irritate your eyes, they're gonna fall out, whatever. And so I was trying to take a shower and I wanted to take my contacts out before I took a shower. And I was looking all over for my freaking contacts case. And I could not find it. I even like went to the other bathroom. I went to the kitchen. I went everywhere. Like did I move it somewhere? Because my parents are divorced. And so like maybe I took the case with me to my dad's house and whatever. I'm looking everywhere. It's nowhere. And I'm finally like, okay, screw this. Like I need to take a shower. I'll figure it out later. I take a shower. I get out. Right there in the middle of the open counter space is my contacts case.
I'm telling you, it's the damn fairies.
But then years later, that's one of those things that you can kind of like write off. Maybe I overlooked it, whatever. Years later, I had already moved out, but my younger sister still lived at home. And we're on the phone. She's like baking cupcakes or something like that. And she had bought icing decorating stuff. And she's like, okay, I need to go get like my icing tips and bags and stuff. And she's like, where is it? I swear it was right here on the kitchen counter. And like, she's looking all over. She's like, maybe I took it to my room. She goes, I'm on the phone with her this entire time. She goes to her room, looks all around, nothing. She comes back right there on the kitchen counter.
Poltergeist or fairies, I'm telling you.
It's something. I don't know. I have a lot more stories, but I won't like spend forever telling about it. But yeah,
we could always drop them in here and there.
Yeah, there's something with my mom. But one of the listener stories that we got sent in is from my mom about this house. So
fun.
Perfect segue right there into an actual listener story instead of just personal stories. So years ago, my mom had a little Shih Tzu dog named Gracie. At this point, when the story takes place, my sisters and I have all moved out. So there's nobody there except for my mom and her pets. And she woke up to hearing Gracie like running up and down the hallway. Because it's important to note, I feel like, in Kentucky, houses are all built on crawl spaces. It's not like that in Texas. We're all on concrete slabs down here. But and so it's like the floors, it's the kind of floors that are kind of loud because of the crawl space underneath. You know what I mean?
Yeah, there's like an echo.
Yeah. So I feel like that's important. So she hears the running up and down the hallway like that. And she's like, Gracie, what are you doing? Like calling to the dog, trying to get her to come in. And she hears a voice whisper, listen.
Oh, hell no.
Oh, I'm not even done. I already have chills up my arm. And so she stops and she listens. And then she could hear, based off of like the sound of the footprints, like she could hear Gracie run down the hallway and turn a corner. In the same time and direction, she hears giggling going down the hallway and seemingly around that corner.
No.
She's home alone. Like, we're all, first of all, adults at this point. So we're not...
That's,
I hate it.
Yeah.
I'll have to ask her if she's had more experiences with the quote unquote like little girl that we assume must have been giggling.
Yeah.
I do know she did not give me permission to share this, so I'll ask her before we post this. Otherwise, we'll edit it out. I do know that my younger sister, we used to share a room, same room that I saw the silhouette, and we used to have bunk beds at one point. And she woke up one night and saw a little boy sitting on the ladder.
And all you have is sisters. Let's point that out.
Yes. Well, I have two stepbrothers, but they didn't come into the picture until we were teens.
Yeah. Well, they also wouldn't be at your mom's house.
True, that too. Yeah. But so yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff there.
Yeah. All right. So my listener story is from Jerry A. And Jerry is also from Kentucky, like Lindsay. He started out by saying, sorry, this is really long, but it is definitely time for me to share and get this one off my chest.
Oh, that's always a great start.
Now, I haven't read this. I just read the little intro and I was like, ooh, got to get off my chest. Okay. So
right. Yeah, that's intriguing.
Since I was but a little one, I have been gifted with the ability to feel and see at times the spiritual realm. If you have ever read or listened to any of my other experiences, you know, more than most of my close friends or family, it's very common because of the stigma for people to not talk about their experiences, afraid of being shamed or called a liar. In my opinion, I agree with that.
Right, yeah.
It says, yes, some of my experiences have been so bizarre that even I had to shut my mind down to tuck them away in the far back side of my mind. Several have caused me near mental breakdowns, depression, even to the point of suicidal thoughts, which breaks my heart, by the way.
Yeah.
It says, sometimes I feel like a cold breeze is blowing, and with that, I know I'm not alone. It says, I will always out loud announce my position as a child of God, and that I will not allow any negative contact. Most of the time, it's not anything vicious. In fact, the majority of the time, it's just a shadow or a noise that can't be explained, like a knock when no one else is there. I moved into, it says, I moved into this apartment a little over 3 years ago that is owned by some family of mine. Everyone around knew the place was haunted. It was so bad that some people refused to even come in, and a few swore they would never sleep over there. One example, a cousin of mine said that she had a horrifying experience in the bedroom and refuses to sleep there anymore. This cousin of mine, let's just call her Angel. Well, Angel said she had stayed in this certain bedroom for a couple of months with a few mild experiences throughout, movements with the bed while she was trying to sleep, and her boyfriend being shoved a couple times, and one being completely pushed out of the bed. Angel and her boyfriend started having arguments all the time, and before moving into the apartment, they never really argued. It got so bad, her boyfriend decided to go stay with a family member for a couple of weeks. One night, Angel was in the shower after a long day at work. All of a sudden, the lights flickered a few times, quickly, to the point that she got confused, wondering if it was just her imagination. She hurried out of the shower and rushed to bed. She was so scared. She was overwhelmed by anxiety, even though she had never really seen or heard anything. Finally, fell asleep for about an hour, and then out of nowhere wakes up, not able to move, not able to scream, not able to make any sound. Then there it was, this huge dark shadow, so dark she could see the outline so vividly, even though all the lights were out. It was standing at the foot of her bed. It was about 7.5 feet tall. She said, "Oh, this is so," I got chills everywhere. It says, she said that the only way she could explain it was that this thing was huge in size, muscular, with the head the size of a bird, and with two feathers or horns sticking out of his head.
No.
It leaned over her motionless body and put his beak to her head and squawked so loudly she thought her head was going to explode.
Oh my gosh.
Let's just talk about that. It had a beak. Oh my God. Ugh. It
The
says,
mental image I have right now is just awful.
It says she felt dirty, violated. She said that nothing physically happened. It was more like everything happened telepathically. After what seemed like an eternity, guessing 10 minutes, the thing stood upright and walked through the wall. That morning, she promptly moved out, and even though she does come visit me there, she refuses to go back in that room or to the bathroom. This happened about 6 years ago, and she told me this a couple weeks ago. Also, she asked me to change her name and to never tell anyone who she is, but gave me permission to share. Anyways, back to me. I moved in here over 3 years ago, and when I first moved into the place, it was very active. Shadows, things moving, tables, chairs, items on the table, almost everything. Oh, and noises. One night I came home from work, and a picture that had been hanging on the wall was laying in the middle of the room on the floor, face down, but not broken. So how does that even happen? But anyway, it says this picture box was for a pet that had passed, containing a picture card and the collar that my dog had worn. On the picture card is a script and prayer ending with "in Jesus' name." This is when I decided to find out if this thing had evil intentions. I remember I hadn't heard Angel's story yet. I immediately started praying and blessing everyone and everything. I felt a very cold breeze, and nothing was on to cause it. So that's just like eerie. He just felt like cold chills. It says, I knew right then that this thing was evil. I felt so nauseous. It was spiritually attacking me as well as physically attacking me. In my mind, I could see this demon. It weighed like 300 pounds, and I weigh about 150. I wasn't sure what I was about to see or what was about to happen, and I felt fear start to overwhelm me. I had to stop for a second and regroup. Too late. This thing knew it had to act now. The lights went out. 2 bulbs blew at the same time. I shut my eyes and started praying for the protection of Jesus and the Archangel Saint Michael. The air was so heavy, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. I started walking through the place, blessing each room. I made it to the bedroom, and I walked to the side of the bed and was shoved very hard onto it. I spoke loudly. In the name of Jesus, I demand that you stop. I command you to go back to hell that you came from. You are no longer welcome here. This is my home, and you are not allowed here. You are no longer allowed to harm anyone ever in this home. Now go in the name of Jesus. Be gone. Yeah, I have chills too. It says, the whole room was lighter. The weight was lifted. As I used oil to anoint each door and window, I heard faint squawks. I had no idea where it was coming from, nor what was making the noise. I just kept doing it and praying till I couldn't hear anything anymore. Nowadays, I feel a presence of a ghost from time to time, but nothing evil. Nothing has moved since. And you should know one thing. These are real. Our realms are closer than you think, and we should all be careful what we dabble in. Someone had invited that thing into this apartment and it wasn't wanting to go anywhere. Just remember, there is a higher power, and we as humans don't have to remain victims. If by telling this helps one person, I feel the backlash from a million, it'll be worth it. Stay blessed and safe, and thanks for letting me share this with you and your show. Well, thank you. Oh my God, thank you. That was like so intense. You need to write a book. I just want to say thank you, Jerry, because my mind is blown. My skin is crawling, and it's too early, but I want wine.
Also, I have to state, because it was emphasized a lot in the story, the importance of boundaries. I talk about boundaries a lot, like in relationships, but when it comes like if you are sensitive to things like that, you have to have boundaries. And he's hit it right on the nose. Why?
Yeah,
like something invited it in, like whatever. Like it sounds like he's got really strong ones, and that's really good because it's important.
Well, I'm gonna get a little vulnerable before we get off the show. My daughter passed away this year, and that's not something I care to talk about, except for the fact that I will say I feel her presence from time to time. My lights will flicker, things like that.
Yes.
Well, one night I was in my crafting room and I hear a little girl giggling. Fun fact, I know what my kid sounded like, and it did not sound like her. And I said, for the love of God, you are not welcome here. Get out of my fucking house. And I haven't heard it since. But usually little giggly sounds are demons, and I'm not having none of that come in my house this year. Nope. I don't have time for it. But yeah, so like I feel like things get invited in whether you intend for them to or not.
Yes, and especially there is like I've mentioned before on show how I refuse to ever participate in a Ouija board. It is things like that because like, oh, it's a little kids game, ages 8 and up.
By the way, 8? That's wild.
Right. At 8 you can summon the devil, but you can't do anything else. But no,
but you can't cook eggs on the stove, but in a year you can summon Satan.
Yes. And, you know, some people do believe that it is all it is, just a game. But why would you want to risk it? Why would you want to risk opening a portal and inviting things in?
Yeah. Like, I like the curiosity behind it because, like, I'm a very curious creature. But
well, sure.
I don't think I could ever follow through with it.
No, that's the one thing. And I've told my kids because they've like, have you heard of a Ouija board? Yes, we will never touch one.
Yeah.
We will never touch one.
But it's just one of those things like I've heard giggling and I'm just like, I shut it down because it's kind of like those things in the Appalachian Mountains where they're like, if you see something, you didn't see anything.
If you heard all the time,
if you heard something, you go inside and ignore it. You don't talk back. You don't answer the calls.
Can I just touch on that for a second?
Oh yeah.
My mom's from the Appalachian area. And we always grew up saying Appalachian. I know a lot of people say Appalachian.
Yeah. I
think it's a regional thing. I'm from Kentucky.
I'm country, so I don't know how you're supposed to say it.
I was always thought Appalachian, but I mean, to each their own. But anyways, my mom's hometown where her parents and all that family still live is technically part of the Appalachians. And when I started seeing those TikToks where they're like, if you hear something, no, you didn't. If you see something, no, you didn't. Don't go outside at night, all that.
It just kind of makes you go, oh God, what could I have, seen or heard in my childhood? Because I didn't grow up in that kind of area, but like, it's just one of those things like, the boogeyman comes out at night type thing. So
I flat out asked my mom, I was like, I am sorry. Was this a thing? And she's like, no, I never heard anything like that. She's like, we did like snipe hunting or whatever. Because
snipe hunting.
I was about to lose it. I was texting my sisters before I texted my mom, and I was like, have y'all ever heard of this? Because I swear, if we used to go and like stay for sometimes a week or more at my mom and papa's house.
Yeah.
And I'm like, You mean to tell me we were down there and no one warned us
Right?
about the things? Like there's like big old like hills and woods and all that all around. And then I guess it turns out it's not a thing in that area, at least not. And she even asked my uncle if he ever heard anything, and he hadn't either. So maybe we weren't far enough in to the mountains because
Right.
it's kind of like on the edge there. But
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things like you talked about snipe hunting. My son was driving me crazy when my husband was moving the shed the other day. I was like, why don't you go snipe hunting? He goes, what's snipe hunting? And I go, it's real fun. I was like, you should ask grandpa. And so he asked his grandpa, he's like, what's snipe hunting? He goes, it's a real blast. Go out in the woods with a stick and see what you find. I was like, no, he can't go in the woods. He got real bad poison ivy. I was like, tell him to go around there in the front yard and see if he can find a snipe. By the way,
yeah.
he didn't.
Oh, what do you know? But yeah, so apparently it's not a thing in all the Appalachians. Like I said, though, like it's not really, they're not like in the mountains. We would go to the mountains a lot, like the Great Smokies and stuff like that's all like part of the Appalachian Mountains. But I guess they're like 2 foothills-y or something. I don't know. But I was about to lose it. I was like, if we for real went out there and no one ever told us, like we were afraid of snakes and stuff. But and then here, oh, there's creatures in the woods,
Wendigos and skinwalkers, and it just Bigfoot. Yeah, it's fine.
Mm-hmm. Find those snipes for?
Oh, right. Oh my goodness. Well, that's about all the time. That was fun. That's about all the time we have for today. I have a doctor's appointment I have to get to in a little bit of fun, but it's just one of those things. Like we wanted to do like a little intro to listener episodes with some of our own personal stories and like some little side story too.
Sometimes the best way to get talking is to hear somebody else's experiences that remind you. Like, I mean, some of these stories I shared, I didn't even think of sharing until I heard Anna say something that reminded me of it. I'm like, oh yeah. So hopefully it inspired you guys to remember some of your stories to send in too.
You could leave them on our Facebook page, just in the comment section. You could private message us on Facebook, Instagram. You could email us at gabbpodcast@gmail.com. That goes for your paranormal stories, any true crime related stuff that you've experienced, any true crime or paranormal stories or topics that you wish for us to cover in the future. And also, we just want to connect with you guys. We want to get a discussion going, like what keeps you up at night.
We talked earlier about like the woman in the mall, the people messaging us. Like, it really means a lot to us. We love to talk about it. And it's not like we want to talk about ourselves thing. Like we just want to connect with people.
Yeah, we're 2 stay-at-home moms. And I've had kind of a shitty year, so this is just me trying to I mean Lindsay has too, but like
different levels for sure.
Well, the losing my child thing affected us both, but she also has other personal, like a life, so she has things going on. We all do. And it's just a nice hour-ish long break for us each week when we record.
Escapism for us as well as it is for you.
So I want you guys to know, like, you listening means the world to us because it's something that we can commonly bond over.
I also want to say, of course, we've been wanting to do listener stories probably from the start of the podcast. And we keep kind of easing our way into it with the hopes of one day doing a full bonus episode. But we want to kind of just like give you a taste of it before we do that. But I just want to say in general, we have like lots of really cool things beyond just listener stories coming to the podcast. And we are super excited.
Stay tuned. Ooh. All right. With that being said, we will be dropping hints and tips and all these fun little things on our Facebook page. So keep
an eye on our social media.
Yeah, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Stay tuned to be, in the loop on what's going on with us in this podcast. And for this week, stay spooky, listeners.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Ghosts in the Attics, Bodies in the Basement, a Fearscape Media podcast. Music by Stephen Timperley. Artwork by Laura Ramsey. Find us online at fearscapemedia.com/GABB podcast or on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at GABB podcast or email us gabbpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you.